Who are you?
Aloha, this is Trinidad the Island Man, your Island Man, coming to you live once again from beautiful Hawaii here on the island of Oahu, bringing you, yes you, the best movie reviews on the entire island of Oahu. And yes, this is Trinidad the Island Man, your Island Man. And Thursday night, opening night, I went in and I saw the new Marvel movie, Shang-Chi. Now, actually it's called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And, well, without further ado, remember our rating scale, shock a thumbs up, it's good to see, I recommend it. Shock a thumbs down, it's junk, I don't recommend it. And for the new Marvel movie, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, it is a shock a thumbs up. Now, with that out of the way, let me just say that this movie is no Black Panther. Black Panther worked on a lot of different levels, basically building upon, an overall feeling of injustice towards, a group of people who have been marginalized, not only in America, but throughout the world for hundreds of years. Shang-Chi is more of an individual story. One man's quest to find himself and his own place in the world, outside of the realm of his mother or his father. Basically to forge his own path and come into his own being like that. And basically that's the kind of story that we get with Shang-Chi and the Legends of Ten Rings. Now this is also a built upon story, continuation of, the Iron Man 3 storyline where the Mandarin was introduced. Basically, Tony Leung, who is the main villain in this movie, is Shang-Chi's father. He is the real leader of the Ten Rings, and his name is not the Mandarin. As he says in this movie, he has gone by many, many names. And apparently, he had found centuries ago, thousands of years ago, these what we would call in the West bracelets. I guess I've only seen these type of rings used as martial arts weapons in one other movie, and that's Kung Fu Hustle. I've never seen them, despite all the other martial art movies that I've ever seen, where, mainly they're an offensive and defensive and offensive weapon. Basically solid metal bracelets that you can wear on your arm to aid both in strengthening your punches, but also giving you some type of defense against attacks as well. Outside of that, I've never seen these used like that. And for the Marvel character of the Mandarin, who Tony Leung is saying without using that name, and he even scoffs at the name the Mandarin, saying that this is this foolish name that these Westerners had used when they were fighting Iron Man. Basically making fun that it was just a Chinese food kind of line or a name that they had just made up, for Mandarin, or chicken Mandarin or something like that, chicken dish, basically. And this, and so right there, I'd say that Marvel not only beautifully shifts the character of the Mandarin away from the cultural stereotypes that the comic, as a main villain for Iron Man, all those many years ago through the 70s and 80s, even into the 90s, that Marvel had faced. And this basically puts an end to that, as Tony Leung is representative as more of a, kind of an Asian Chinese conqueror, almost like a Genghis Khan in a way, a emperor of China almost, as he and his band of 10 rings that he had formed over thousands of years after finding these rings. And it's not clear where he had found these. In the comics, these are jewelry rings that one would wear on their fingers, not the arms that you see in this movie. That is more of a cultural change and an update to the character. And in the comic, he finds these rings in a crashed alien spaceship many, many years ago, each of which, one for each finger, has some type of special power. One can make him fly, one can fire ice bolts, energy bolts, etc., flames, some type of levitation or telekinesis from another ring. I have a full listing that I could give you in maybe a later video on how these guys have changed. But basically, we don't see too much of those older powers from these rings, these new rings that are worn on the forearms. Basically, we do see some force or energy projection, but in addition to that, and it does seem to offer some type of limited flight or at least some type of long distance jumping by means of the rings themselves firing off of their hand and or their arm, the wearer's arm, and propelling them along. Kind of giving them a boost or a very much like an Iron Man repulsor type of action. So for limited flight distances, we see that he can make force fields out of these. Also, he uses some type of force whip, think like a la whiplash kind of thing with these rings, whereas they can extend off his arm, for a ranged whipping physical attack. He's also entangled people with these, whereas, an extension of his arm, they can go and wrap around another opponent's body, arm, and thus entrap them, we see in the movie. But essentially, the powers are radically different than the comic book, and also the physical manifestation of the rings themselves. Again, being more of these martial art forearm ones. Again, check out Kung Fu Hustle. That's the only other martial art movie that I've seen that have used these type of rings very effectively in a martial arts kind of setting. Again, I've seen a lot of martial art movies, and I've never seen those rings used other than Shang-Chi and and Kung Fu Hustle. So now this also stars Simu Liu of Kim's Convenience fame. His 5 seasons there really kind of solidified his comedy chops there, and he does deliver some interesting comedy one-liners, also, in his physical kind of comedy interpretations, alongside with Awkwafina, who is also a hoot in this movie and provides very much, comedy relief. What can I say about this movie? More so than anything else, I guess. I guess the major thing would be that it's very much not the comic book. The comic book, being from the 70s, essentially was from, was basically based on Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon. Because the Marvel series had started the Shang-Chi Master of Martial Arts around in the 70s, just after pretty much the movie of Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon. And in it, if you've seen Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee plays a kind of quasi-government agent working for possibly the Hong Kong government, teamed with the British government as well. And basically the comic book expands on that very, very much. Being so that he's actually almost, not really an official agent of MI6, but he does seem to work with several people of MI6, one of which is another Chinese woman, Chinese-British woman, who I guess is supposed to be the Awkwafina role, but the movie has no ties to the British intelligence service, at least not as of yet, perhaps in future iterations. Basically, in this version, well, like the comic book, he was also, he was the son of a great warlord, but in the comics it was Fu Manchu, because Marvel had licensed the literary character Fu Manchu for use in their comic. And basically he had this, worldwide criminal organization that basically his brother wanted, well, his son was frowned upon, and eventually wanted to take down this organization with the help of the British intelligence service, and basically kill his father, which I believe in the final episodes he does. He was highly technological, Fu Manchu being a scientist, etc., able to do this kind of stuff. Advanced weaponry, cybernetic assassins, very much like you see in the trailer with the fight on the bus with the man with the blade replaced arm. That is one of the main characters from the comic book. So this stars Simu Liu, Awkwafina, Tony Leung, Fala Chen plays Tony Leung's wife, and thus Simu Liu's mother, and Tony Leung his father. And also has Michelle Yeoh, and Ben Kingsley makes an appearance in this movie. It actually gets some considerable time, making amends for his portrayal of the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. And in one fell swoop, Marvel erases all of that cultural stigma and redeems both Ben Kingsley, his character as Trevor the actor, and this new version of the Mandarin played by Tony Leung. So being a much serious, much more fiercer warlord, leader of this criminal organization. Now, and essentially this falls into that same trope of what takes place. Simu Liu as Shang-Chi, basically being raised by his father, who, well, I guess you have to go a little further back. His father was, when he found these rings, and it's not clear how he finds these rings that give him this super phenomenal power, able to rival that of Thor, or even, or Iron Man, I'd say. Maybe even more powerful. It's unclear. Just the power levels that these mystical or technological rings are, and it is unclear how he finds them. Some people say there's a legend at the beginning that he finds them in a tomb, or that he finds them in a crater, etc. So they're already saying that maybe these aren't mystical, but this is some type of alien-like the Infinity Stones. That's what they seem to be, and almost of that caliber of power level, in fact. So somehow they are not of Earth's origin. They somehow made it to Earth. Tony Leung finds them, and for centuries he rules, from the shadows, through his organization, the Ten Rings. But in his quest for more power, he attempts to find this mythical, magical place called Tao Long, or Tao Lo. And it is well guarded and hidden deep within a forest in China, I believe. Or maybe Macau, I'm not sure. But I think China. And in doing so, trying to penetrate its defenses, he finds Shang-Chi's mother, and during a fight which is best described as Tony Leung versus Zhang Ji in The Grand Master, he falls in love. Basically, this is your classic martial arts fight between a man and a woman, where he's coming all with a hard style, straight on, direct attacks, and she's very much redirecting him, very Tai Chi-like movements, being more based in nature. Even his power and her, you know, she can somehow manipulate the wind and the plants to assist her against his power of the Ten Rings. As he's firing these energy blasts, she's able to redirect them with the wind and all of that. Very, very man of Tai Chi, very Shaolin soccer almost, in fact, to describe the fight in this. So those two fall in love from this. He gives up the powers of his Ten Rings to marry her, and they raise a family. But they are not admitted into this mystical city to live. They have to go back to the real world because he had done too much evil, Tony Leung's character, throughout the centuries. So she gives up all her mystical powers. She's still a great martial artist along with Tony Leung, and he gives up wearing the rings. He keeps them, but he's stored them away. And he has a daughter and, of course, a son, Shang-Chi. The wife is killed later on, and thus, in a fit of rage and vengeance, Tony Leung puts back on the rings to get revenge, and thus realizes he should never have taken them off to begin with, or else she would still be alive. And you know, basically that is where he starts to harden up on his children, forcing Shang-Chi to get ready to take his place by his side by toughening him up through torturous, rigorous martial arts training, day in and day out, where he becomes a master of martial arts. By the time he's a teenager, or a young adult, he decides to run away after his father forces him to go kill the man that killed his mother. And in doing so, he is 10 years apart from his father, befriends Awkwafina there in San Francisco, totally has a new identity, but after 10 years, his father has come back to, you know, seek a possession that he has to help find this lost city of Tao Long and get him back on his side so that he can rule once again with his son. And so that's basically the story. And it pretty much plays out pretty well. Now, I won't go into any more spoilers, but again, it is a shock, a thumbs up. The martial arts in this, I was very, very concerned that, you know, Simu Liu from Kim's Convenience, he is not a martial artist. And I felt that, you know, especially, you know, were we going to get another Iron Fist like on the Netflix, whereas they get this guy and he can't do martial arts. But he really took the time and did the choreography, and he is seamless in this role as Shang-Chi, master of martial arts, in this movie, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Aquafina is drop dead funny as always. And even she gets some action beats in this movie that kind of sort of makes sense. I mean, she's no martial artist or physical fighter, but she is given a means that makes sense for her to, to assist Shang-Chi at the moments where it's most needed. And the chemistry between Tony Leung and his son, Simu Lee, is fantastic. Tony Leung, for anyone who might not know him in the West, he's a old hat in Chinese film and cinema, and a fantastic actor, an international star. And so having a person of his caliber, again, along with Michelle Yeoh, is absolutely fantastic, and you can't go wrong watching his performance or Michelle Yeoh's when she comes in. And Ben Kingsley, as far as being the silly Trevor actor again, he is an Oscar award-winning actor, and he delights when he has his moments in the movie as well. So again, this is a total shock of thumbs up as well, from action to comedy to family drama as well. And it certainly sets off the next realm of Phase 4 perfectly, because there's 2 end credits. The very last one just basically sees the extension of the 10 rings. The 10 rings, even without Tony Leung leading, remains in power. Maybe a diminished force as far as a criminal organization, but still a criminal organization at that, capable of, just like the mafia, extending influence throughout the world. Just maybe diminished more so without the power of the 10 rings and and Tony Leung's character, the man, formerly known as the Mandarin in the comics. Gosh, what more can I say about that? And the major end credit scene, which is before that, almost right before the credits, but after the movie, basically involves, I guess, the next who's going to make up the Council of the Avengers, kind of what we'd seen in Endgame with Black Widow leading everything. But I guess since she's gone, it falls to Wong, Doctor Strange's Wong, to contact everyone and keep abreast of situations on Earth. And Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, and the Hulk, Bruce Banner, all get together and question Shang-Chi on these rings, saying that at the moment he used them, everyone on Earth, who had some type of power to detect massive energy, could detect it. And none of their spells or their magical tomes seem to reference or have any knowledge of what these 10 rings are. And even Captain Marvel, being, versed in the universe and other alien cultures, does not recognize what these rings are or if they're technological. So not knowing if they're magical or technological based leaves a lot of questions, but it is clear that these were powerful enough to alert some of Earth's and the universe's greatest heroes, Captain Marvel and Wong and the Incredible Hulk. And Wong says we detected a beacon emanating from it as soon as they were, activated fully by Shang-Chi, who takes over the 10 rings. Spoilers. But you see him using them even in the posters, so it's not far-fetched that he would have them at the end of the movie. And so I think that's going to lead directly into the Eternals, and that somehow these 10 rings are a piece of celestial technology. And this signal that it's sending out will be what will alert the Eternals in their movie to get back together, to rejoin the band, reform the band, to fight these, what they call deviants, if you have seen the trailer of the Eternals. So I think Shang-Chi ties directly into, or will tie directly into the Eternals, because it's that kind of power level that we're talking. Infinity Stones, which were created by the Celestials, and who the Celestials create the Eternals. I believe it is these 10 rings that were created by the Celestials, maybe in kind of a, waste process of creating the Eternals. The Celestials had these 10 rings that maybe were the basis forming the Eternals, and were just discarded there on Earth, being seen as nothing more than, already used up, creating the Eternals like they wanted, not giving them these 10 rings any more mind. And then that's where Tony Leung finds them, and eventually Shang-Chi gets them for use. But yes, so more so, in the comics, the Shang-Chi character was just a master of martial arts. He didn't have any additional superpowers. Later on in the 90s, I believe, they gave him some stupid duplication powers, so that basically he could multiply himself, and thus he could fight armies and stuff with his duplicates, using his martial arts. All that was stupid, and I hated. I didn't even read the comic after that. I hated the character with that. More so the traditional Bruce Lee, one-on-one. Well, not even one-on-one. I mean, Bruce Lee obviously can take on a group of individuals and or a small army, and so could Shang-Chi in that respect, just using his martial art knowledge and techniques. But he didn't have any superpowers. But his skill level was such that he could fight with beings such as Spider-Man, Iron Man, go against the Silver Samurai, and in fact, in the comic books himself. Even holding his own against members of the X-Men and Wolverine. But to have him get these powers from the 10 rings that his father Tony Leung had, as in the comic book of the Mandarin, this puts him at a whole new level scale on that, such as Thor or even Captain Marvel, as far as power level goes, at the minimum level of Iron Man, and possibly exceeding that as well. Like I said, Thor or Captain Marvel kind of level power, as long as he's using these 10 rings on his forearms, 5 on each. So then he can take on fantastic elements, fanatical elements here. He defeats a dragon thanks to these 10 rings, etc. So I don't know what more to say without spoiling anything further, and hope I didn't give you too much details in it. So be sure to check this movie out. It is very enjoyable, very funny, and I'll definitely go ahead and see it again. Again, a strong shock and thumbs up for this movie. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. During the 70s through the 80s, the Shang-Chi comic book was beloved by a lot of Marvel fans, myself included. This movie does not reflect that same character, which is a good thing culturally. And Marvel/Disney has really gone out of their way to erase those cultural slurs of the evil Chinese in that was represented back then at those times in the comics. And I personally would see no problem with them doing a large distribution in China for this movie. Would it do so well? I mean, it does play out like a very standard Chinese fantasy kind of movie in parts, which the Chinese do like. So it has the potential to be really successful there. On a side note, in addition to the, well, let me just bring this up for your consideration. I don't think any other reviewers have mentioned this, but, you know, they should have if they're Marvel fans. What basically Marvel has done for Shang-Chi, the master of martial arts, is taken that character from the 70s comic books and combined him with Iron Fist and the Iron Fist mythology. Now, bear with me for a moment. Instead of Iron Fist, you know, he studied and trained in a legendary hidden city of martial arts and magic, or, you know, myth, hidden away from the world, called Kung-Lun. You saw a little bit of that in the Marvel Netflix series. And as the chosen individual of Kung-Lu, he gains these superhuman powers of the Iron Fist, which, you know, puts him on par with characters such as, you know, Power Man, you know, Luke Cage, even enough to maybe take on, you know, an Impact Spider-Man, Iron Man could be damaged. He could probably break Iron Man's armor with the Iron Fist. Now, that being said, you know, so that being said, you know, what Marvel has done, instead of Kung-Lu, it is Tao Lo, where Shang-Chi must go to and find this hidden city so that he can train with the people that his mother grew up with. In this hidden village where mystical, magical martial arts is, fantastical creatures like dragons exist, whereas Kung Lao, you know, that's where the Iron Fist is the power of the dragon, thus the tattoo on Danny Rand's skin. Now, there's no tattoos on Shang-Chi, but, you know, he does learn a different style of fighting over there. So like I said, Shang-Chi goes to Tao Lo to learn a new fighting technique that, like his mother, so that he can better defeat his father, who had always been one step ahead of him. So Tao Lo, in this case, in Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings, becomes Iron Fist's hidden city of Kung Lao. And basically, he trains there, like Iron Fist, Danny Rand did, Shang-Chi does, to learn a greater amount of fighting. But, like I said, instead of the Iron Fist being the ultimate weapon, although Shang-Chi does meet with a dragon, does, at least while they're in Tao Lao, gain some type of more supernatural fighting style, where he is able to deliver more punches, maybe a more forceful blow, very much like his mother did in, you know, controlling nature, the wind, the leaves, plants, etc. During his fight with his father, very much like she did back in the original, Phelan Chen did against Tony Leung earlier in the movie of Shang-Chi. So basically what I'm saying is Marvel has done an amazing thing here by wiping out not only the Chinese ethnic stereotypes of Shang-Chi, which they did in the comic book during the 70s, but also, in a way, erases everything of Danny Rand and Iron Fist, merging these two characters together from the comic book into the current iteration of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Shang-Chi, which we see in this movie. Now, we know that Daredevil, Brian Cox, or is it Brian? Is going to be in Spider-Man No Way Home, and also in the She-Hulk television show on Disney Plus. And also, we know that Kevin Feige has been thinking about bringing back that same actress for Jessica Jones as well. I don't think Kevin Feige is going to bring back, Luke Cage, or, and he's definitely not bringing back Iron Fist. So in this manner, in Shang-Chi, Kevin Feige, the MCU, has done an amazing thing, basically erasing the older versions and culturally inappropriate versions of Iron Fist and Shang-Chi from the comics, merging them into a more acceptable version, and basically combining Iron Fist and Shang-Chi, the master of Kung Fu, all into one character. This new Shang-Chi in the movie Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and played by Simu Lee. And so there you have it. It is an amazing feat that Marvel and Kevin Feige has just done, and you've heard it here first. As far as I know, nobody has put that together. That, basically in this movie, we get acknowledgement that there will never be an Iron Fist character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the idea of Iron Fist has now been combined with Shang-Chi from Simu Lee's character. Basically, instead of the power of the dragon and the Iron Fist, he gets the knowledge of the dragon, the martial arts style, from Tao Lo instead of Kung Lu, and instead of the power and mystic magic or technique of the Iron Fist, he has the 10 rings from his father, Tony Leung, which, again, like I said, may become, may be something from the Celestials of that power level and magnitude, thus able to push the MCU and Shang-Chi more into the future. Basically becoming that much more than what the Iron Fist was for Danny Rand. All right, so those are my thoughts on that. Am I wrong? Go ahead and comment below and let me know. But again, for sure, a shaka thumbs up for Shang-Chi. Go ahead and check it out when you can, however you can. Thank you, mahalo, and aloha.